Okay, so Refraction Railway 5 came out a few days ago, and it was certainly fun. I liked it. And with its release, 3 new abnormalities came out. The chain-smoking, lung-hurting sleeping bag of a bygone day, the Crimson War headhunter with a relationship problem, der Fluchschutze, again, and the massive blood-yearning flower that definitely has something to do with vampires, 400 Roses. Let's talk about them. Hi there, welcome back to the Abnormality Room, where we talk about the many monstrosities known to man. Now, out of all of these, 400 Roses is definitely one of the many abnormalities that I wanted to cover in a separate video, which I think I'll make one day, but not now. So I'm very excited to talk about this dude. As for the other two, well, let's see. Let's not waste any more time and begin with the first abnormality. This abnormality is very cool. Not the best abnormality in my opinion, but still very cool. T-03-16-15 is a Tet 3 level abnormality that is essentially a giant skeleton with ribs, spine, and skull, with a shadowy guy inside, who also has a smoking problem. So much so that he may have lung cancer from all that smoke. Since for some reason, according to one of Otis's observation logs, it's explained that the abnormality's air improves the keenness of their attacks. Free poise, essentially. But the dude inside the abnormality doesn't want anyone else to have it, so it just steals it personally, and violently at that, as if desperate. Which tells me that this dude, despite having the smoke that hurts like ass, doesn't want to let go of it. So why? From what the Mirror Dungeon explained, it could potentially be as a form of penance and resentment, for whatever reason. Maybe because of his special air that he breathes out, since if we choose to watch, then the Shadow Man leaves, or dies even, and heals us. Maybe that is the penance that the dude left to inflict upon itself, or reaching out to grasp onto something, anything. And by the way, who is that dude anyway? Otis surmises that the shadow dude, while named Jeff, is the core and the main body of the abnormality. The ego also supports this with having Faust and Ryoshu be the center of it all, and having the whipcage as a weapon. Also the corrosion arch changes, so that too I guess. But if I were to surmise on the identity of Jeff, we have to talk on what has happened in the background. Out of all the ego/abnormality backgrounds, this one is the most unique backgrounds out of them all, in my opinion, since I feel like this can tell a story. Yeah, I'm essentially doing free fan fiction from now on. Great. But anyways, let's say that one day, Jeff, for some particular reason, has gotten chest pain, or also known as thorakalgia, for reasons unknown. Whether it's because of smoking, or maybe it's some other reason, like maybe he's a victim of the smoke war, if from what we can see from the outside the door, being all red. But whatever the case, Jeff has been sent to a hospital, and for whatever reason, the doctors there figure out that due to the smoke outside, Jeff has gained a special kind of breath that heals anyone affected by it. It's a good thing, but because of that breath, it hurts Jeff, like a lot. His chest and lungs feel a certain sharp pain, so sharp that it feels like every breath Jeff takes, it feels like his lungs are being stabbed by his sharp ribs again and again. But for whatever reason, the doctors didn't do what they should have done, and instead used his breath of smoke to heal any other patients, and it works very well. Everyone cheers, but Jeff is still in pain after, what, days, weeks, or even months of said pain. So eventually, out of anger and rage, he eventually somehow kills everyone with a pressurized smoke, taking their deep, last and final breath. But eventually he realizes that all of this was meaningless with his shadowy self, so he continues to breathe in this hospital, making himself a cage of bones out of penance, still in pain until his end to heal others, even if it hurts. But again, at the end of the day, that's all just speculation from my end, and was basically just a fanfiction that I made up from just my knowledge alone, and can also be inconsistent, maybe. So who cares, right? Anyways, let's talk about ego. Ryoshu having thorakalgia ego is not at all surprising. It was explained many times that she's a chain smoker, and she smokes a lot. So from an outsider's perspective, it makes sense. But Faust is interesting, since it may make no sense for her to have it. Wouldn't Gregor, who also smokes and also has relations to the smoke war big time, make more sense? but logically speaking, if we take what the abnormality could essentially mean, it actually makes sense. Thematically, the abnormality essentially means penance as a sort of punishment from desperation of survival, or something like that, chaining yourself out of guilt to be more simpler. So in Ryoshu's case, maybe it has something to do with the source material, Health Screen. If the Ryoshu sword is actually her daughter theory is true, then yeah, this ego is probably meant as a sort of punishment to herself because of what happened. Maybe. And as for Faust, well, we don't actually know and can only speculate. Same with Ryoshu, but more on Faust's case. Maybe chaining herself down because of her alternate self, or even the Discord. Maybe her identity as a genius. I don't know. You can maybe tell me your speculations on that. Anyways, yeah, the main complaint that I have with him though is that why the fuck does Sleeping Bag of a Bygone Day not have the smoke status? The most recent Walpurgis enemies had it. Like, come on. Anyways, let's shoot down that topic and move on to Der Fluch. God, what a stupid joke. This section is going to be a little shorter, well, a lot shorter, because 1, I've already talked about Der Fluchschutze before in the video about the 2 hunters, which you should definitely check out, by the way, link in the description, and 2, the quote-unquote new info that came out with its release isn't really new, but more like clarifications. But then again, now I have an excuse to talk about this thing again, even if I'm just summarizing it, so whatever. Der Fluchschutze, or F-01-16-13, is a HE4 level abnormality that takes heads with a shotgun in a war-filled land, beset by the smoke war, shooting, and shooting, not to take a side, but to forget his girlfriend/wife because of the potential deal he made with the devil, or another ancient entity if Der Frei has anything to say to that, since Der Fluch has similarities to Der Frei, like a lot of similarities, but it does have many differences, such as having someone to actually remember by, and in a now recent RR5, Der Fluchschutze brings her up, or I guess we brought it up with the pen, but whatever. If we win the check, Der Fluch checks it out, then he becomes enraged and becomes a little depressed because of that memory, which Heathcliff, the sinner that is in the observation logs, sympathizes with it, even saying that even if he's just an abnormality and abnormality stories I wouldn't lend my ear to, which to that I say, fuck you, Faust, I don't give a damn. I want to talk about my likeness to these monstrosities. Anyways, back to it. If we fail the check, he just starts blasting without open independent, and that's it. Yeah, to be honest, Der Fluch doesn't have much going on in the new things. Just the same old depressed soldier who possibly could have been contacted by the devil, got a war style in the smoke war, and became Der Fluch. Hell, it's probably even the case since its name is translated to the cursed shooter, and a curse suggests some things, so that's cool. As for ego, well, with what Heathcliff has to say in his observation logs, it just shows so much more for him and its reason for him having the ego. And for Isan, it's once again more visual speculation with context from the abnormality and the character, so nothing special there. Although I really wish that Gregor will get this ego, as it fits him a lot. Anyways, let's move on to the final abnormality that I have been looking forward to the most: 400 Roses. This abnormality is very fucking cool, but was slightly disappointing in the difficulty department. Maybe because I was using the Blood Fiend team and they were just taking his blood that he would have gotten if I would used a different team, but oh well. F-04-16-04 is a WoW 5 level abnormality that wants to drink your blood again and again, and when more blood comes in, and it wants a lot more and more, and you get the idea. This abnormality essentially represents the nature of blood fiends as a whole, and their inner desire for blood. Their yearning, if I were to say. Hell, it's even ironic that Dawn is the person that talks about it, since she even slips up with Sancho, quote, "It looks like an average rose at a glance, indeed. But there are eyes glistening between each petal, eyes with looks that I find familiar, glinting eyes of insurmountable desire. The eyes not so dissimilar from those of my blood-starved family. It desires not to slay, nor does it to harm. That creature, it merely yearns for blood." Which, yeah, a nice summary of what it actually is and does. Hell, it's even nice since it doesn't really give any bleed, since it wants to have a lot of it, and even gets angry if you don't give it any blood, which is cool. But why would such a specific abnormality exist if Nosferatu also exists? What are the differences between the two? Well, Nosferatu exists for a different reason compared to 400 Roses. Nosferatu represents vampires in general, their appearance, their monstrous nature, and power, which can also link back to blood fiends, while 400 Roses is specific, representing their yearning for blood, their desire for it as an emotional and mental requirement. It's explained that 400 Roses is overjoyed to having the spring break, and the blood is given to it in its mirror dungeon event, so that's something. But this event also explains that the flower was once a rose that could have been tiny and beautiful, but now the blood it holds gives off a cruel smell, which suggests that something must have happened to give itself the massive and greedy want for blood. And to explain that, we have to talk about a novel named Carmilla. Carmilla is a novel by Sheridan Le Fanu, made in 1872, and 400 Roses has a couple references made to that novel. To explain what the novel is in short, Laura, the protagonist of the novel, was preyed on by a female vampire named Carmilla, who, for some reason, had some sexual tension going on. I don't know why, but that's something. Carmilla was invited to Laura's family after a crash, and became close friends, which, yeah, close. Eventually, it is revealed that Carmilla is actually one of Laura's ancestors, Mircalla, and eventually, after many events, Mircalla dies at the end. And you get the point. Essentially, if we were to take what we know about this novel and place it into the context of Limbus, that we know of at least, then there are some similarities, such as the EU gifts having the vampires' names, and the like. But what does the flower being small and beautiful have something to do with the novel? Well, that's because in the novel, Carmilla wanted to be something other than a horrible vampire, and wanted to be beautiful and a friend, but her yearning for blood and all that forces her to become more monstrous. That's why the Carmilla ego looks broken, and why 400 Roses was considered to be beautiful during its time of youth. But when it succumbed to blood, it essentially became sort of a monstrosity, and why Mircalla, or I guess it's called Malarca for some reason, is more bloody and fixed. Although, then again, why did Carmilla come from feeding 400 Roses the blood from the vein and Malarca from the sinners? Maybe because it's certain type of blood, like blood from a person versus blood from nature, perhaps? I don't know. But anyways, let's move on to ego. The Yearning Mircalla ego, another reference to the novel by the way, is an ego that is very good, and is on both Don Quixote and Merceau. I don't have to explain why Don has the ego, right? Like, if you have seen Canto 7, then yeah, it's literally the most fitting one, since she's a fucking blood fiend. So an abnormality that represents them should be an ego that fits with one of them. The more curious part of it all was Merceau instead. Now, I have never read The Stranger, but I can guess his character from Limbus alone. He's more of a person that would much prefer to be told what to do, instead of thinking for himself, and for some reason blows up the sun, from what I heard, at least. So why does Merceau have this ego then? Well, maybe it's meant to show his inner thoughts, what he truly wants, but in the case of blood. But on the outside, he is different, I guess. I don't know. I never read The Stranger. I never planned to. Well, for now, I guess. So, yeah. Cool ego though, still. Love the wings. Anyway, subscribe. I'm head out now. And there are a couple weeks left, I hope, for Honlu. So that's gonna be good to do. Anyways, yeah, bye.